Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whatever time of day you listen to this show. Hello to my 7 subscribers. Thank you so much for subscribing. It's much appreciated. If you are new, welcome to the Jay Rooney Show. We have yet again another jam-packed day, so it's a good time to be joining the show. We're just going to get going. Did you hear about Kyrie Irving buying a ticket to his own game for not being vaccinated, then hugs and hangs out with his teammates after the game? This makes absolutely no sense, and it is hard to believe. Logical? I think not. So, jumping into the Rooney bin, Saudi Arabia considers accepting yen instead of dollars for Chinese oil sales. Saudi Arabia is in active talks with Beijing to price some of its oil sales to China in yen. People familiar with the matter said a move that would dent the US dollar's dominance of global petroleum market and mark another shift by the world's top crude exporter toward Asia. The talks with China over yen-priced oil contracts have been off and on for the last 6 years, but have accelerated this year as the Saudis have grown increasingly unhappy with decades-old U.S. security commitments to defend the kingdom. No surprise, I think those of us paying attention have been worried about this for years. Since my late teens, I've had an uncomfortable feeling coming from Saudi Arabia. I feel like they're the guy who breaks bread with you, but while sitting at your table, his hands are under it with both middle fingers pointing up towards you. Look, I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying this because I believe it to be true, and that is Joe Biden is the worst president of my lifetime, maybe ever. When you have Trevor Noah giving Trump praises because of Biden, you know it's bad. And of course, Fox News picked up this story. Trevor Noah rips Biden over Saudia UAE phone snub. So it was reported that Biden basically called Saudi Arabia and they didn't pick up. And Noah said this would have never happened to Donald Trump. Let's be real. I don't think gas or electric gets as high with Trump. I think we have less supply chain issues with Trump. I'm not sure we'd have war in Ukraine right now if we had Trump. I'm not sure Saudi Arabia and China would set things up if not for Biden. I don't think we have the mandates under Trump. I think a lot of things would be different had we elected Trump. Under Biden's watch, we've seen record inflation, and like I said yesterday, people are talking about recession. I hope people are waking up, but I have hope to a fault maybe. I still believe in America. Has President Biden lost liberal comedian Trevor Noah, host of Comedy Central's Daily Show? Sounds like it to me. In an opening monologue during the week, Noah expressed frustration about a Wall Street Journal report that said Biden's calls to Saudi Arabia seeking support for Ukraine and help with the struggling U.S. gas prices were rejected. Noah claimed that rejected phone calls were one thing that Biden's predecessor, former President Donald Trump, never would have had to deal with. You've got to be kidding me, Noah told viewers. Apparently, Saudi Arabia won't even pick up the phone for the President of the United States. In my opinion, Biden has never had what it takes to be the president. So I'm not all that surprised. How can America maintain its power if we've lost all of our values at home? What ethics are even at play right now? Are there even ethics? Do people even think about what their ethics are? Do you even remember what ethics are? All lessons from the past have been forgotten. We've disconnected from the times. All the written history, the oral history passed down from one another. Talk to your children about life. It's important. It's your responsibility as parents to raise your kids right, not the schools. Stop being too tired. I know you work hard, have housework to do, but maybe something's worth sacrificing to spend just a little bit more time talking to your kids about history and the world they're growing up in. All right. Russia sanctions Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and others. Russia Foreign Ministry says it has imposed sanctions on U.S. President Joe Biden and 12 other U.S. officials. The list includes Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, Press Secretary Jen Psaki, and other members of the administration. But it also includes 2 surprises, and really it shouldn't be a surprise to any of us that they included Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden. Look, they're both corrupt as shit. I don't even think I need to get into Hillary. And if you need any reminder, Biden's caught up in some of the Ukraine scandal, Hunter is caught up with some of the Ukraine scandal with his father. I don't fully understand the situation, but once again, go check out Ukraine's on Fire documentary on Rumble. It definitely will break it down better than I can. The measures block their entry into Russia and freeze any assets held in the country. Others on the list, Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley, and you know what? I can't even believe this guy still has a job. I hope as soon as we get another administration and they're, this guy at a minimum loses his job, perhaps charges should be brought on him for treason. If you remember, Mark Milley and I believe it was Pelosi went behind Trump's back and basically, I believe it was China, they told that whatever Trump is planning to do, that they would tell China first. So in my opinion, it doesn't technically fall under the rules of treason. But when I first heard that story, it was at the beginning of this year, I was pissed. I thought that was really messed up. And that story never caught steam ahead. Like nobody picked it up except a couple people that I listened to, like Tim Pool. Yeah, that was super disappointing. So he's on that list. That should be no surprise to anybody who's paying attention and knows what he's been up to. And then there was also the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, and a few others, obviously. There was, I believe, 12 total. So the ministry has said it's applying sanctions on the basis of reciprocity. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world. Moving on, Biden nominee Sarah Bloom Raskin withdraws her candidacy from Federal Reserve Board. Sarah Bloom Raskin, President Joe Biden's embattled nominee to the Federal Reserve, withdrew her candidacy to serve at the central bank. Raskin's withdrawal ends a week-long partisan battle in the Senate over her views on climate change. The move came a day after Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia said he could not support her nomination. Biden had picked Raskin, a former Fed governor and deputy Treasury Secretary, to be the Fed's next vice chair for supervision, one of the world's most powerful banking regulators. Back in Russia and Ukraine, little Russian-Ukraine update. In Ukraine, Russia lobbed more missiles into Kyiv amid heightened fighting in the city's outskirts as delegation of European leaders headed to the embattled Ukrainian capital to meet with President Zelensky. One missile did end up destroying a building associated with an arms maker in central Kyiv in a pre-dawn strike, blowing the windows out of the buildings in 1 block radius. In a second strike, 2 rockets hit apartment buildings, setting fire to one of them. Back in Russia, a woman ran onto the set of an evening news program on Russian state television's flagship channel, one holding a poster reading, "No war, stop war, don't believe propaganda, they lie to you here, Russians against war," she yelled, "Stop the war, no to war." Before the camera cut away, Russian state-run news agency TASS reported she had been arrested and investigators are considering bringing charges against her. Back in the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan pressed a top Chinese official over Chinese alignment with Russia during what U.S. officials said was an intense 7-hour meeting that included discussion of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The White House warns of severe consequences as Congress cuts COVID aid per Yahoo. So, after prolonged back and forth, Congress did end up passing that $1.5 trillion dollar government spending bill last week, but they did drop from the final package $22.5 billion in pandemic relief that Democrats wanted to include. On Tuesday, the same day as the President Joe Biden signed the 2,741-page bill into law, which is absurd. I'm sorry, I don't know much about the law, but I gotta say, if a bill is 2,741 pages, it is way too big, and there's a bunch of bullshit within that. That is just way too big. How can a guy like Joe Biden possibly understand what's in a bill that big? His aides warned that the omission could have severe consequences, as we will not be equipped to deal with a future surge. The U.S. could soon run out of funding for COVID responses such as booster shots, treatment efforts, and tests if the legislation remains stuck in Congress. Officials warned. The warning, which came in the form of a letter to congressional leaders and a press release focused on the possibility of future variants as current caseloads have dropped since the record-breaking Omicron field numbers from over the winter. The article goes on to warn of future variants, and really, in my opinion, that it's really just the same old song and dance from the past couple of years. And to be honest, good or bad, right or wrong, I'm over it, and you know what? I'm not really sure I give a shit. Does banning extremists online work? It depends. By Vox. Vox is actually obsessed with this. They've done several articles from the past couple years on banning people or canceling or deplatforming, whatever you want to call it. This is my first opinion analysis of a Vox story. I'm not a big fan of them. I consider them to be a little further left than I prefer. However, they may be coming around to the fact that cancel culture is really bad. It's a big maybe. But it's been over a year since Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube banned an array of domestic extremist networks that had flourished on their platforms leading up to the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. Around the same time, these companies also banned President Donald Trump, who was accused of amplifying these groups and their calls for violence. So, did the great deplatforming work? There is growing evidence that deplatforming these groups did limit their presence and influence online, though it's still hard to determine exactly how it's impacted their offline activities and membership. While extremist groups have disappeared to alternative platforms like Telegram and Parler and Gab, they have had a harder time growing their online numbers at the same rate as they were on the more mainstream social media apps. The article went on to say people and the media are still talking about many extremist groups with more frequency, and one could surmise that it's making the extremism worse. But they keep saying that data was hard to read. I guess data can be hard to read, but don't you have people like to read that at a place like Vox? I don't know. One of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Vox. Moral of the story, canceling or deplatforming people only pushes them further into their echo chambers and they become more tribal. We need to learn how to work through our problems all over again. I wonder what Marcus Aurelius has to say today. If you are doing your proper duty, let it not matter to you, whether you are cold or warm, whether you are sleepy or well slept, whether men speak badly or well of you, even whether you are on the point of death or doing something else, because even this, the act in which we die, is one of the acts of life. And so, here too, it suffices to make the best move you can. I leave you with that today. Jay Rooney Show.